Matt, you're good.
All right, thanks. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Standing for Truth. My name is Matt, and I will be your host and moderator for tonight's debate since Donny is basically sick and has no voice and is recovering. He will be working backstage and saving questions for Q&A, so make sure to tag him. That will help me a lot. We will not be doing an open mic tonight, but we will be doing one next week when Donny is better, so stay tuned for that. It is a privilege to have Mr. Anderson and Dr. Dino here for the debate proportion of the video, and we're going to jump into that now. And the topic is going to be, can any living thing bring forth other than according to its kind? Gentlemen, feel free to introduce yourselves. I guess we can start with Mr. Anderson. Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Mr. Anderson. I'm a lawyer out west, and I've been watching far too many debates on YouTube. Now, I greatly admire Dr. Hovind's skill at debate, and he's very enjoyable to watch. I feel like in a lot of those debates, there's far too much of scientists talking at Dr. Hovind, rather than just asking him questions and letting him explain what he means. And I think if evolutionists were to simply ask questions and honestly listen to the answers, rather than worrying so much about defending their theory, maybe we could find some common ground. And that's what I hope to do today. Now, the question I have to answer today is a challenging one that Dr. Hovind has been asking for years. Show me an example of a living creature that brings forth other than according to its kind. Now, I'm going to need to ask some clarifying questions to make sure I understand what Dr. Hovind means and whether the various examples that I have in mind would qualify, and do my best to answer that tough question. Now, we've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to try and give this discussion some structure. So first, I intend to talk about the basics, things like presuppositions, some questions about the Bible, and just nailing down some general things about terminology. And then I want to talk about my first simple counterexample and see whether it fits the bill. Then I'm hoping that we can talk about amoebas. Specifically, I'm very much looking forward to Dr. Hovind asking me whether I think I am related to an amoeba in the most condescending tone possible. I want the full Hovind experience. I won't be offended. I've been looking forward to it all week. But we can't get to that question until we've laid some groundwork, or else the answer isn't really going to mean anything. We've got to cut off some of the ways that either one of us can dodge and deflect, so that when we get into it, those points actually land and mean something. Now, Dr. Hovind, man is sinful by his nature, and I am no exception. So please do not tempt me with your siren song of discussing religion in schools, or radiometric dating, or the geologic column. Those topics are super interesting, but if we go down those paths, we either won't get to amoebas or it won't mean anything. So please don't tempt me. Let's keep our eyes on the prize and remember the dream, amoebas. By the same token, if you agree, let's really hold each other to the old one topic at a time rule. That's it. That's my introduction, and I'll turn it over to Dr. Hovind for his response.
Awesome. All right. Pull that back. Sorry, I'm trying to guess which one puts Kent's full screen. All right. Kent, when you are ready, you are muted. I'm still trying to put you full screen. I am not sure how to make you full screen. Donny did that, and now he's gone.
I don't mind being at the bottom of the barrel here.
All right.
Just go ahead like this. Well, yes, I guess if that's what you want, I can do that right away. Mr. Anderson, do you believe you are related to an amoeba? How's that for condescending? Okay, put that, answer that anytime you like. Okay, anyway, my name's Kent Hovind. I've been a Baptist preacher 49 years. I taught high school science and math 15 years, and we make a lot of materials on science in the Bible. I believe the Bible is literally true and scientifically accurate. God said, let's see, I can call it up for you here. Let's see. In the book of Genesis, chapter 1, the very first chapter, he said they're going to bring forth after their kind, after their kind, after their kind, after their kind. It could not be more clear. They're going to bring forth after their kind. Obviously, that raises the question exactly what is a kind. But the burden of proof is not on me to prove that, since I'm not demanding the Bible be taught in schools. They're demanding that evolution be taught. And I think the burden of proof is on them. I think you'll see Mr. Anderson try to switch that tonight. Like, I've got to prove something. What is a kind? I believe they bring forth after their kind, or a two of every sort. So the burden of proof is clearly on them, because they want to use tax dollars to spread their religion. And evolution is nothing but a religion that people believe in. They say, we see they bring forth after their kind, but they make these family trees, and the kids have to learn this, like this is part of science, like humans and birds are related, and dinosaurs and ladybugs back to an amoeba. I say this is propaganda. This is not science. This is a bunch of lines on paper is all it is. I could draw a line on paper between a Volkswagen and a frog. So it doesn't mean they're related. So really goes back to some definition of terms here. What is science? Science is things we've gained by observation and observe. All we have observed is cows make baby cows. There's no exception to that, okay? And he may want to give an example of something that is, in his mind, something slightly off from what the original was. I'll be glad to talk about that if we can. But it goes, also, we got to look in the definition of species. What exactly is a species? I had that in here somewhere. Definition of species. I find a lot of 26 different definitions in the dictionaries that I've looked at of exactly what is a species. It seems like nobody really knows for sure what a species is. And keep in mind, all this stuff about classifying animals into groups or kinds or species, this is all man putting our interpretation on the animal. The animals don't care how we classify them, and they know what their kind is. Squirrels look for another squirrel to mate with. Cows look for another cow. The cows and squirrels have no interest in each other at all. So my take on this whole thing is that evolution is that idea of these family trees is nothing but a religious belief, and you're welcome to your religion. I don't object to that at all. I do object to them forcing everybody to call this science, that these are related, and they're not. A lot of different kinds of hummingbirds. That doesn't prove the hummingbird's related to a frog or a cow or a human. So I'm curious to see what he has, because I've been teaching science for a long time and collect science books and do, this topic is of great interest to me. The textbooks say all forms of life are descended from a common ancestor. I resent that. That's not science. And if you can find a creature, an animal or a plant that is slightly different than the parents, that wouldn't prove the big chart that everything is related. You'd have to go through and make 10 trillion different proofs of each step of the way. None of the steps, I don't think, show any scientific evidence, and you're a lawyer. Where's the evidence of an animal producing something other than its kind? So I'd love to see that. And I do think the burden of proof is indeed on the evolutionist, not on me. Again, once again, I'm not asking for government funding to preach my religion. But I think the evidence shows dogs always make dogs, always. Maybe a little dog or a big dog, and there's a limit. You're never going to get a dog 12 miles tall. You're never going to get one smaller than a flea. I don't know where the limit is, but I think they're probably getting close to the limit now, and there is a limit. Atheists don't admit there's a limit. They think these variations go forever. I strongly disagree. So, Mr. Anderson, what example would you like to discuss? Or let's say you said my skill at debating. That's a kind of a backwards way of saying I'm good at showing I'm right, and evolutionists are wrong, and they don't like that. So they're wrong. I'm right. The Bible's right. See, I'm not always right, but the Bible is. Go ahead. His mic is muted. Your mic is muted. Everybody's mic is muted. There we go.
There we go. Well, thank you, Dr. Hovind, and thank you so much for sharing the stage with me today. And it is Dr. Hovind, isn't it? I've heard some debate online about that with some people saying that you don't have a real PhD, but if you say you do, I'm not going to debate that with you. I'll take you at your word, and that's how I'll treat you in this debate. So,
okay. Yes.
Biblical
You
creationism.
Call me Kent. Call me Bubba. Call me Hey You. But where's the evidence for evolution? Go ahead. I do have 3 doctorates, but that's okay.
Right.
4 actually. 3 earned.
Yes, the only reason I ask, sir, is because it's going to affect the level of knowledge that I expect out of you on this subject.
Oh, okay.
So, an I don't know might be a reasonable answer from a layman, but not for somebody with a PhD in the field, for example.
Ooh.
So, how would you like me to address you today? Is Dr. Hovind accurate?
That is accurate, but that doesn't matter. If you want to call me that, fine. Should I call you Attorney Anderson?
Mr. Anderson is fine, or sir.
Mr. Anderson. Okay, Mr. Hovind's fine with me too.
Well, I'll stick with Dr. Hovind if that's
Oh,
how you want to go. So,
so why did you ask?
and you don't mind answering a few of my questions, right?
I don't mind.
Okay. So let's start with the basics. So I'm going to start with some presupposition stuff, and then I'm going to have a couple of questions about the Bible, and then I'm just going to get your understanding of some terminology. Okay? Sir?
Yeah, yes, go ahead.
Okay. So these are the easy questions. The tricky ones are going to come later. So number one, you believe you exist, right?
Yes,
And you believe in God.
yeah, correct.
And you believe that God is a loving God that wants the best for his creation.
Yes, but we need to be cautious what our interpretation of loving is. My dad loved me enough to spank me sometimes and hurt me. Sometimes God the Father has to get rough, but at least, yes, I believe he loves us, yes. But he's also a fair judge.
Okay. You also believe that God is honest and that he would not lie to you or try and trick you, right?
I think, like in warfare, wherein camouflage is a legitimate form of basically lying to your enemy. I know I'm not here, so I'd be cautious. I'd have to see that question, I guess, sharpened up a little bit. But God certainly deceived people that needed it at times. But anyway, God cannot lie, according to the Bible. That's what it says. God cannot lie. Go ahead.
Right. So God does not lie in that he doesn't try and mislead people about the way that the world works. Is that fair?
To my knowledge, I've never seen him do that. Right.
Okay. And you believe that he does not do that, right?
I believe God does not mislead anybody.
Great. And for that reason, you believe that you can trust your senses, right?
Not always. We can't always trust our senses. They can be fooled many different ways. Any magician can tell you that. But trust my senses, or I trust his word and my senses most of the time.
All right. Well, let me ask you a more direct question. You believe that what you can see and what you can hear and what you can touch are real, right?
For the most part. Again, it's easy for humans to be deceived. There's all kinds of ways that can happen, chemical hallucinations and stuff like that. But generally, yes.
Okay. And you believe I am real?
Do I believe you're real?
You believe I am real?
As far as I know, I just see a digital representation on a screen here, but I'm assuming that's a real you. Yes.
Okay. So unless you have some kind of a reason to believe otherwise, so for example, if you think that you might have taken some substances, or you might be undergoing some kind of a psychotic episode, except for situations like that, you think that what you see and hear and touch are real. Is that fair?
That's generally correct. Yes.
Okay. Are there any other exceptions that you want to discuss, or can we just say that that's correct?
Well, I don't see how that has anything to do with the debate, but yes, as far as I know, I trust pretty much what I see, feel, and hear.
Okay. And you believe that God gave you a mind with which to reason, right?
Yes.
Okay. And you believe that he did that so that you could make sense of the world around you, right?
I'm not sure why he did it. That's probably one of the reasons, certainly.
Okay. So now I'm just going to talk about some things that we're going to grant each other. Now, we talked about this already over email, but I'm just going to kind of rattle this off, and then I'm going to ask you to agree. None of this should be a surprise. And so what I said was that I'm going to grant you the existence of God for the purposes of this debate with a couple of restrictions. We will agree that he created the universe and that he created life. If you want God to be able to tinker, that is, do miracles along the way, then here are my restrictions. Miracles happen every day, but God plays by his own rules. In general, he acts on the world in accordance with its physical laws in such a way that you can't even tell he did it. That is to say, just because it's a miracle doesn't mean that it doesn't have a naturalistic explanation. And just because it happens to have a naturalistic explanation, that doesn't mean that there's no God in it. That science does not steal his glory. He used the science to achieve his ends. Were he to do otherwise, were he to violate the laws of physics, or directly and supernaturally affect the world, it would be pretty obvious. It's going to leave a trace, like it did in the resurrection. There's no debate amongst Christians that God did that. We agree on all of that, right, sir?
Well, I'd be a little cautious answering that. God created the laws. He's not bound by his laws. He can walk on water if he wants. I don't think that would leave a trace anywhere other than testimonials of people who've seen it.
Well, that would
I
be a
don't see how-
trace, sir. That would be a trace, sir.
Okay, they left a trace. People saw it and testified.
Yeah.
Yes, we saw him do that.
Yeah, so there's some evidence, right?
Well, yeah, all of
I
history.
mean,
All of history. I don't know that Abe Lincoln was president. I didn't see it. I take somebody's word for it. So anything outside of my observation, I'd have to say is the different kinds of evidence. You know that, you're a lawyer. Some are stronger than others, right?
Right. So there will be evidence of these different miracles, and we can weigh that evidence as we go. Is that all fair?
Well, I'm not sure how you could get evidence of something happening like raising the dead, other than a testimonial.
Well,
Is
there
that
will be
good evidence?
testimonials.
Anyway,
Sorry, go ahead.
yes, God is not bound by his laws. We are. I'm stuck in gravity. He's not. I'm stuck in time. He's not. He can go back and forward. He's not. This is not 2023 in heaven. He's right now in all time. He's standing at your funeral right now. Go ahead.
Right. So we agree, though, that in the event that you want to talk about God supernaturally affecting the world, that you're going to provide me with some evidence that he did that. Is that fair?
If I can, if there's evidence available and I know about it, I will certainly share it.
All right. I think we've made progress already. So in future debates, I'm going to refer to this set of assumptions as the October 13th protocol. If I use that terminology, you'll understand what I mean?
Okay.
Okay. And you're not going to try and change or go back on me now, are you?
I don't know. You may have tricked me into something like lawyers like to do, saying something
I may have, sir.
Yeah.
Well,
okay.
but let's sort of nail it down then, so that you understand what it is you're agreeing to, because I'm not yet, at least, trying to trick you.
Okay. That's why Jesus said, "Woe unto you, lawyers." Go ahead.
Well, I mean, hopefully Jesus will forgive me when when I reach the pearly gates, right? But I just do my best. So just so you understand what it is you're getting yourself into, if we build on the assumptions that we just talked about, if a miracle does happen that violates the laws of physics, it's going to leave a trace. We already agreed on that. And we would be
no.
more...
I didn't say I agreed to that one.
Okay, you don't agree that miracles leave traces.
If a miracle happened, it's only to leave a trace, is what you said. Sometimes just to show his glory. It doesn't have to leave a trace. He created the world. I don't know. Sometimes it may just be to show his glory, his power. The miracles in Egypt, okay? The turning the water to blood. So I'm a little cautious saying I agree 100% to that, but go ahead and twist it how you want. Go ahead.
Right. So, and again, the only reason that I'm kind of belaboring this is because I want to make sure that we do agree on these things. So if a miracle happens that violates the laws of physics, then then it is going to leave a trace, and we are more likely than not to notice that trace, because God does not try to trick us. Is that fair?
I'd have to think on that one for a while before I answer.
Well, go ahead.
And I
Take
think
your time.
I don't see how this is anywhere near the topic of asking about, where's the evidence of an animal producing other than its kind? You're supposed to provide some evidence for that. I haven't seen that yet.
No, take your time. Think about it.
Phrase the question one more time.
Sure. So if a miracle does happen that violates the laws of physics, it's going to leave a trace, and we would be more likely than not to notice that trace, because God does not try and trick us, right?
Well, if it left a trace like Jesus walking on water, he might have walked on water when nobody was watching. He could have had done a miracle then. He probably prayed to the Father. So no, I'm not going to say everybody it doesn't always leave a trace. I won't agree to that. As far as I know, it does, but that's a little too much of a nebulous question.
No, that's fair. Can we at least say that in the event that there is no evidence of a miracle, it is less likely that whatever happened by supernatural means?
We would have no way of knowing with a miracle. I don't see any way we would possibly know that. That's where it gets into faith. I have faith in a lot of things, but I'm not asking my faith to be taught. I think it's a miracle for an amoeba to turn to a whale. Now, that's a miracle. I don't think it doesn't leave a trace.
Right. Well, sir, the reason that I'm asking you this is because, as we go on, if I corner you, I don't want you starting to invent miracles, and especially not miracles that leave no trace, to try and get out of it. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you can have miracles. in your responses. They just can't be invisible miracles that have no evidence to support them. You
Okay,
understand what I mean?
and vice versa. I think, where's the evidence? So here they have an amoeba turning to a human. I want to see the evidence for that. I say there's
That's
none.
great, sir. That's great, sir. Now, do you agree to what I've just said? No invisible miracles.
As far as I understand it, yes, I do.
Okay. All right. So we'll add that to the October 13th protocol. Is that fair?
Okay.
Okay. Now here's the last thing I want to talk about with regards to presuppositions. You believe that the world around you makes sense and behaves consistently, right?
Generally, we have weather patterns that are not, go crazy and earthquakes and things we have no control over and can't even predict. So as generally, yes, it predicts. I think it generally follows the laws of gravity and physics. Correct. Go ahead.
And you believe the sun's going to come up tomorrow, right? I mean, philosophers say that we can't prove that logically, but we assume it. No. We believe it.
Technically, right? The sun doesn't come up. We turn, and it comes into our vision. So, okay, yes. I think the Earth is turning, and the sun's going to come into our vision tomorrow morning about 6:25 in my latitude.
Right.
Okay.
And that is something that we presume, right? Without evidence. We have that shared presumption, right?
Right. We've had thousands of years of observation of this happening. Right.
Right. We agree that in general, the past resembles the future. The way things are working right now is the way they're going to work in the future, and is the way that they're going to work in the past. Unless, of course, there's a miracle. And if that happens, then you can do that, but you just have to tell me how things were different and why they worked that way. Fair?
Well, it may not be a miracle. There was all of a sudden all the buildings in Hiroshima fell down, and that was not a miracle. That was an atomic bomb. It was man doing that. So they were used to getting up every morning and seeing their window and they're in place. And now all of a sudden everything's gone. So again, I think the question's a little nebulous, but I'll give you a qualified yes. Go ahead.
Well, sir, I'd like a hard yes. And I'd put it to you that that the bomb in Hiroshima, although it may have been unexpected from the perspective of the residents there, was not something that was unexpected by science, right? The laws of physics applying in that situation were the same as the ones today, right?
Right.
Okay. So you agree with me that the laws of physics apply the same now as they do in the future and the same as they do in the past, subject to our discussion with respect to miracles, right?
Right. God's able to, he's not bound by them. We are bound by those laws. Yes.
Right. And if God is going to intercede, he's going to do so subject to the rules we've just discussed, right?
If God's going to intercede and go beyond those laws of physics, he's going to leave a trace or leave a test. Is that what you're saying?
It's going to leave a trace. You're going to be able to show me that trace, or you'll be providing you with some evidence of that trace, right?
Well, I don't think I have to. Again, you're trying to shift the burden of proof to me. This is my religious belief that Jesus can perform miracles and raise the dead and can take me to heaven when I die, but I don't have to prove that to anybody. I don't understand.
Well, sir, the thing is that this is a debate where we are going to be discussing a number of things, and I've got no problem with you invoking miracles, but what I do have a problem with, as I said before, is you invoking miracles that you have no evidence for. And in the event that you want to invoke a miracle, then there needs to be some kind of a justification. I thought we had agreed on that.
Well, I would say the same burden of proof, same burden is on the evolutionist to provide the evidence. Where is the new information to turn an amoeba into a whale? Amoebas don't have fins or flippers or lungs. There's a lot of new information. They're calling on a miracle, time to do it. And the burden of proof is on you guys to prove your religion of evolution, not on me.
No, I understand. I have a very heavy burden that I'm going to have to meet. I agree with you there, and I'm going to try and meet that. I want to make sure that we're clear on when and how miracles come into play. Are we clear on how miracles come into play?
You're probably clear in your mind, and I'm clear in my mind. Now, whether we're thinking the same thing or not, I don't know. But yes, I believe God can do miracles, and they may or may not leave a trace. They generally do. And go ahead.
Okay. Well, let's make sure that we're both on the same page. So just to recap, the October 13th protocol assumptions are as follows. You're real, I am real, God's real. He loves us, he doesn't lie to us. We can trust our senses. God created the universe and created life. He usually works through natural processes. Supernatural interventions leave a trace. And where you want to invoke a miracle, you have to justify it with some evidence. And the Bible can count as evidence, though it might not be definitive. Where there is no trace of a miracle, then it's less likely that such a miracle occurred. Lastly, things work the same way in the past as they do now, unless you want to point to a reason why that isn't so. You agree with those premises?
Well, you went by kind of fast. There's several I've already discussed. I said, I'm not sure we can always trust our senses. Any magician can tell you that, sleight of hand, and people get medical problems or physical problems. So again, the same caveats.
Let's make that caveat. I'll give you that caveat, subject to the possibility that you're being fooled by a magician or something. We'll include that in the protocol. You agree with that?
Yeah, people get fooled. People get dizzy getting off a merry-go-round, and their senses are they're not standing up straight when they are. So
okay, so subject to that as well, then. Subject to things like things like that, where there's a problem with your body, or there's a problem with somebody deliberately fooling you like a magician. Subject to that, we can trust our senses.
Those are the two exceptions I can think of right off the bat. If I knew the debate was on this topic, I could have come up with more. But go ahead.
All right. Well, if you come up with more specific ones, then we can talk about those. But subject to those, for now, you're comfortable with that set of assumptions, right?
I'm comfortable to the point I understand it. Yes, sir.
And you're comfortable agreeing to it?
Again, as far as I understand it, yes.
Great. Amazing. Well, I'm sure that's going to help a lot, not just in these debates, but in lots of your debates. So now I want to move forward and I want to talk about the literal truth of the Bible. Now, you believe that the Bible is literally true, right?
The word literal would have to be defined. The Bible has allegories and stories in it to teach truths. I think all parents use stories. So it seems to me, sir, you are way off topic here. But yes, I will say as best I believe the Bible is literally true. And when it says there's a story coming, then it was a story. As opposed to a literal thing that happened. So the word literal needs to be carefully defined there. But for the purpose of this debate, I would say, yes, I often say the Bible is literally true. God said they'll bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody's ever seen.
Certainly Genesis is literally true, right?
Well, even there may be some, I have to go back and think, all 50 chapters, I've read them 100 times. Are there any allegories or stories or like a dove is in the Bible? Anyway, so... It's been 36 minutes, sir. You haven't given any evidence for the purpose of this debate tonight. But go ahead.
Well, sir, I've said before, I have to lay the foundation, or it's not going to mean anything. Now,
you have to twist. So
I want to be clear. We have to lay a foundation, or none of this is going to mean anything.
Okay, go ahead.
I want to be clear, sir. Genesis, in particular, it's not just figuratively true. They're not just allegorical stories in Genesis, right?
I believe they are literally, they'd happened. The people there, literal people, and the stories that are told in Genesis are correct. Yes.
Okay. The things that it says in there happened just as it says, right?
That's my belief. Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, you're the expert. I don't have a doctorate in creationism, so you tell me. And it's not open to creative interpretation. Is that right?
The book is not open to interpretation. I don't know that I would agree to that. I mean, everybody, there are many things that are said that need to be interpreted, like exactly what is a kind. He said they'll bring forth after their kind. Your idea of a kind and mine might not be the same. So we may have a different interpretation of that word, but the Bible says they can bring forth. Oh, well, that helps narrow it down. There's 7,400 different kinds of frogs, and some of them might not be able to bring forth with each other. So I don't know how many kinds of frogs God made, but yes, right. I'd be cautious of the word
creative or interpretation.
We might not have the same interpretation sometimes. Go ahead.
Well, so you're saying that the Bible and Genesis in particular is subject to interpretation. Is that what you're telling me?
I think everything in the world is subject to interpretation. What's the weather going to be like tomorrow? Well, you might think it's cold up there in Canada or hot up there in Canada, and I might think it's cold. So.
So, like, I couldn't say that a creation day was more than 24 hours. That's not. Is that something I'm allowed to do in terms of interpreting Genesis?
Well, yeah, you can understand it any way you want. I think if you take all the other verses, see, no prophecy of the scriptures of any private interpretation. You have to put them all together. Later, when God told Moses, tell the people, work 6 days and rest one, because I created everything in 6 days and rested one. Well, now that helps narrow down what the day means back in Genesis, but that's found in Exodus.
Okay.
So, and when Jesus said the creation of Adam was the beginning, Matthew 19:4, Mark 10:6, well, that narrows it down. Okay. So I'll give that a qualified yes.
So you're telling me that a creation day is 24 hours, right?
I believe the creation day, maybe slightly less than 24. I think the earth is slowing down, but go ahead.
Sure.
Okay.
So, and I guess here's the more important aspect of this. By the same token, when the Bible says that God created all of the animals, that means that he created them out of nothing. He couldn't have created them via evolution. Is that right?
Well, it says he made them out of the ground, and he made the birds out of the water. So he didn't make them out of nothing. He made the universe out of nothing. He spoke, and it was. But no, after that he chose to take material that he had made. He made man from the dust, not out of nothing. He made the animals out of the dirt. He made the birds out of the water. So again, I'm a little cautious there, but yeah, I believe God made everything as described in the book of Genesis.
Right. But so, okay. So for example, when God created the first bird out of dust, he could not have done that in the womb of a lizard.
It doesn't say how he did it. He says he made them out of, the birds out of the water. And then later on day 6, he made more birds out of the dust. So that's the story. But so all we've ever seen is birds produce birds. I believe God made the birds out, as he said. And since then, birds have always produced baby birds. Never an exception.
Right. Well, except if it would be an exception right off the bat in the event that God created the first bird out of the womb or within the womb of a lizard. He would have the power to do that, right?
He has the power to do whatever he wants, but he did not say that he did it that way. And I don't believe that he did.
Right. I understand that. And look, we'll take your word for, the way that we're supposed to interpret Genesis. As long as we both stick to it, I'm fine. But I mean, I just want to be clear. Like, it doesn't matter, if the lizard and the bird even shared a lot of the same design elements. Maybe they're even so similar that it might be biologically plausible that the lizard carried that bird and laid the egg from which the bird hatched.
Well, I would agree
Doesn't
that
matter, right?
Well, there are biological similarities between many life forms, and that does not prove common ancestry, but proves common design. There are similarities between Ford trucks and Ford cars. They got round tires. That's a good design that works. So if we find similarities, how you interpret that might be to fit your religion of evolution, and I would interpret it to fit my religion of they had the same designer.
That wasn't my question.
There may be similarities. Yeah, there probably are similarities between birds and lizards because they had the same designer, made from same dust.
That wasn't my question either, sir.
What's that now?
That wasn't my question either. Let me ask you my question again. So what I'm saying is that the Bible says that God created the birds from the ground or from wherever he said he created them. Certainly not from other animals, and certainly not within other animals, and certainly not by evolution.
That is correct.
And what I am understanding from you is that we are not allowed to insert things like via evolution into the interpretation of Genesis. That Genesis says what it says, and we can't add things or insert things into Genesis, even if we think they logically make sense to help God out. It says what it says, and that's it. If it doesn't say it, it didn't happen. Is that correct?
It says clearly they bring forth after their kind, bring to the same sort. That's what it says, and I believe that is true.
Okay. All right.
Gentlemen, I'm going to jump in real quick. I'm just doing things backstage, but I do want to remind everybody that the proposition for tonight is, can any living thing bring forth other than according to its kind? Mr. Anderson, I'm not done. I appreciate the last 30 minutes of questions. It's been a lot of fun, but I do want to make sure that Kent has an opportunity to also ask questions. And so since it's been about 30 minutes of questions from your side, Mr. Anderson, Kent, is there anything you'd like to ask Mr. Anderson, or anything you'd like to advance in terms of an argument?
I'm still waiting now. It's been 45 minutes by my watch. That where is the evidence, which is the title of the debate, of anything that did not do this? The Bible says 24 times in the first 7 chapters they bring forth after their kind. What evidence does he have that this didn't happen? Just show it to me.
Go ahead, Mr. Anderson.
Well, we will get there, sir, and I'm going to try and get there as quickly as possible for you. If you give me some straight answers, then we can get there faster. These are not the tricky questions, as I told you. I just want to establish the way that the Bible works, the way that you want us to interpret it, and what you mean by some of these things. So just answer my questions and we'll motor through. Now, what I am understanding from you is that we can't reinterpret and creatively reimagine the words of the Bible. So I can't say that God created animals via evolution, right?
You'd have to define the word evolution. I think God gave the original dog the ability to produce long-haired dogs, short-haired dogs. There's variations within that same kind. Some live better in cold climate, some live in hot climate, some run
Sir,
faster than
I'm
others.
going to stop you right
it's
there
all
because, as you say, we've already gone 35 minutes, and I'm getting some guff about that. So, sir, you know what evolution is. Let's not mince words.
No, I do
You know
not,
that
sir.
evolution in this context means descent with modification, usually by way of mutations, but sometimes by way of gene flow or natural or drift, and the natural selections of the mechanism. You know all that stuff. Let's not get sidetracked. Remember, we have a goal here. I want to get to amoebas. All right.
Well,
Let's
wait a
just
minute.
keep focused on our goal.
Okay, if your definition of evolution is variations, I forget what you just said here. What you've just given, if I understood it all, was a definition of what everybody calls microevolution, which is variations that happen. Certainly they happen. But you want to believe and teach other people and have taught to schools that these variations mean an amoeba turned to a human. So the variations are always within the kind, which is what the Bible says. They will bring forth after their kind. I don't know of any exceptions to this rule that they bring forth after their kind. If you know of
I'm
one,
trying to get to those exceptions, sir.
well, just give it to us and quit babbling and just give us the example.
Just give me answers to my questions and
I
we'll
gave you
get
one.
there.
Go ahead.
All righty.
You
So
gave a
my
definition of microevolution that is not the real meaning of the word. There are 6 meanings to that word. You only gave one.
You know what, sir? I don't even care about debating the definition of evolution with you. I don't, because we're not worried about evolution. We're not worried about species. We're worried about kinds.
Okay.
So that's what I want to talk about, right? So what I wanted to ask you was, I cannot create, or it could have happened. God could have created birds within the wombs of lizards, but that did not happen. And the reason that it did not happen is because the Bible says that each animal brings forth after its kind, right?
No, that's not the reason it didn't happen. It's never been observed to happen.
Okay, why didn't it happen?
It didn't happen. There's thousands of differences between lizards and birds. If you think a dinosaur turned to a bird, you need serious help. Go see a shrink. No, dinosaurs always make baby dinosaurs. And to say that lizards, the womb of the lizard brought forth a bird, is a religious belief. It's not scientifically accurate. There's way too many differences, millions and probably trillions of differences at the atomic level, at the DNA level, at the structural level, any level you want to look at. They're different.
Right.
But even then, going from a lizard to a bird is only one of the trillions of steps that would have to take place to make these crazy family trees true.
Right. Well, sir, we don't care about the family trees today, because all we're talking about today is whether or not things can bring forth other than according to their kind.
Correct.
So a kind is defined in the Bible as a set of animals that can bring forth, right?
Right. If they can bring forth, they are the same kind.
Okay.
Now,
and that means, usually means reproduce.
Here. In the last 6,000 years, they may have diversified to the point where, like the Chihuahua and the Great Dane, can no longer bring forth. They came from the same kind, but now they've reached a dead end.
Okay.
But it's not going to go any further than that. They're always going to be dog.
All right, well,
but again, this is man's classifying the animals. The animals don't care how we classify them.
I know.
Okay.
So a kind is a set of animals that can bring forth, right? That's what the Bible says, right?
Correct. Right.
Okay. And that usually means reproduce, make more of themselves,
right? Right.
Okay. And that's another reason why each animal must bring forth after its kind, because the very definition of a kind is that it has to be able to bring forth and create life, right?
Originally, that's the way it was created. As I said, there may be variations that have happened in 6,000 years. where some are now sterile. Like there are dogs that can't have puppies, and they're still dogs.
Yeah. All right. And just so we don't end up at odds, that's not a circular definition, is it? Like, as a matter of logic, it is possible for something to bring forth other than its kind. We just never see that in nature, right?
I don't know that it's possible. We certainly never see it. It would not be scientific to say we could say it has happened. Anybody can believe that if they wish, but that's not the science. All the science is observation, of testing, demonstration. Millions of dog breeders around the world will tell you dogs bring dogs every time.
Right. Look, I don't want to get into the definition of science. I just want to make sure that this isn't some kind of logic trap where you're asking me something akin to show me a blood relation of mine that is not my blood relation, where it's like the impossibility of doing that has nothing to do with evolution. It's just impossible by definition. But that's not what's going on here, is it?
Well, you talk about logic trap. You've been trying for 50 minutes to do that. Why don't you give us an example of one that didn't do it?
I am trying, sir, to get there. Just work with me. Give me a simple answer. You're
Okay.
not trying to create a logic trap, are you?
I'm trying to just present the truth that they always bring forth after their kind.
So the answer to my question is no.
I'm not trying to
Right?
create a trap. No,
Great. Thank you. Let's move on. And
please.
so no other animal or no animal can create life other than its own kind, and new life will always be the same kind as the life it brought forth. That's your position.
That's all that's been observed in all of history. Yes, correct.
All right. Great. We're past that section. Now let's talk about nesting phylogenies. Now I want to clear up what I think is some confusion that evolutionists have with this challenge that you have for them regarding the kinds. So we're going to talk about nesting phylogenies now. And you understand that evolutionists say that things change very gradually over time, right?
That's what they say.
Okay.
Correct.
And you've heard the color gradient analogy, where a color goes from, say, red to orange so slowly that it's impossible to pinpoint exactly where red stops and orange begins. You understand that argument, even if you don't agree with it, right?
I understand it. It's a man-made interpretation. What exactly is red? What exactly is orange? So this is, the colors don't care what we call them.
Right. And the reason I think you've anticipated where I was going with this. The reason that you don't agree with it is, I assume, because you can draw a line between where red stops and where orange begins. It's just arbitrary, right?
It'd be up to interpretation, right?
Right. And so too with evolution. If the model is true, even though the changes are incredibly slow, there should be a moment where you can say, for any given animal, aha, this is the moment when one individual has accumulated enough of the characteristics of the new species that we can say it is a new kind. It's just that point's somewhat arbitrary, right?
Well, again, that's not the burden of proof. I don't have to prove where the kind starts and stops. You guys have these family trees. There'd be trillions and trillions of huge changes to change an amoeba to an oak tree. It's not just gradually changing.
I didn't ask you to take on the burden of proof. I don't think this is a controversial question.
Okay.
The question was, and I think I'm trying to agree with you. The question was, look, when we're drawing these lines on paper between different species, or I should say between different kinds, they're arbitrary. And so where one kind stops and where another kind begins, you can draw a line. It will be arbitrary, but you can draw a line and say, look, we've decided that X characteristics together mean that's a new kind. And so if any one animal accumulates all of those characteristics at the same time, then aha, that's a new kind, because it crossed that line. Just like the orange, this orange is virtually indistinguishable from this orange on the color gradient, but that's where we drew the line. And so that is orangish red, and that is reddish orange, right?
People do that all the time. They decide what color to call their paint. We're going to call this reddish orange or blue, but it's man changing the colors, though. Paint's not changing itself.
Well, sir, we're talking about kinds. We're talking about man's definitions.
Okay.
Right. So, I mean, yeah, we're both just drawing lines. Everybody's just drawing lines on paper. It's just the question of where those lines are. That's the debate. So, and sir, the arbitrariness gets even worse because that new animal is probably going to be interfertile with at least some members of the rest of the population, though maybe not others, right?
That's probably generally true. I think all breeders would tell you at some point some dogs can't reproduce with other dogs. They're still, I think any 4-year-old would tell you, still a dog.
Right. So that line, it's really arbitrary, right?
Yeah, that would be subject to interpretation, but I think is all we've ever observed. Science deals with what we can observe and study and test. We've observed there is a limit. You run into a brick wall. They've been trying to get bigger cows for a long time. They got up to 2,700-pound bull now. They're never going to get one that weighs as much as Alabama. There's a limit.
Right.
Okay.
Right. Now, sir, just building off that, if we did get a cow that weighed as much as Alabama, would you agree with me that that would be a different kind?
No, it'd be a big cow. Still
So,
a cow.
well then, sir, I don't really understand. Like, you know what? We'll come back to that, okay?
Okay.
All right. Because I think that this is part of the confusion. So you understand what the law of monophyly is, right? I'll explain it for the viewers. I just want to confirm that you understand it.
Correct. Go ahead. Same phylum.
Yeah. Actually, you know what? Nah, never mind. So it's the nested hierarchies idea. So the idea that even as things turn into other things, they're still the ones that they started out as, right?
Right.
Okay. So for example, when the first eukaryotic cells started living in colonies and became multicellular, they were still eukaryotes. Jumping forward, when those colonies had differentiated and started developing spinal cords for the first time, they became multicellular. Multicellular. When they developed spinal cords, they became multicellular chordates, still eukaryotes. When they started growing bones around their spinal cords, they became vertebrates, but also chordates and also multicellular and also eukaryotes. When they grew 4 limbs, they became tetrapods, but they were also still vertebrates and still chordates and still multicellular and still eukaryotes, and so on and so forth. And that's monophyly, right?
No, sir. Your whole premise is started off with the first sentence was wrong. Single cell creatures do not become multicellular. They may get together and make a colony that function to do something, like those leaves on our tree all work together for a tree, but each one's an individual. So your whole premise is wrong. And we don't ever see single cell creatures become multicellular or grow backbones or grow legs. All of your argument is moot.
All right, sir. I held my hand up here because I think you misunderstood what I said, and I wanted to try and stop you because I want to try and get a move on, remember? So what I asked you...
You tried to slip in a quick one on the first sentence.
I'm not trying to slip in a quick one. Let me clarify. What I'm saying is that the law of monophyly, which is not your thing, you don't agree with evolution, right? Biological evolution.
Depends what you mean by evolution, correct.
Yeah, biological evolution. But you understand that the principle, which was created by evolutionists, called the law of monophyly, which you don't agree with, is that when you become the new thing, you are a subset of the thing that you were. So when you have a tetrapod, it's still got a backbone, which makes it still a vertebrate, and it's still a chordate, and it's still multicellular, and it's still a eukaryote. It didn't stop being any of those things, even though it became also the new thing. And that's monophyly, right?
All of that was a big fairy tale. This isn't ever observed.
I understand that it's a fairy tale, sir.
Good.
I'm asking you whether look. Let's go into the land of SpongeBob, okay?
Okay.
In the land of SpongeBob, that's what the law of monophyly is, right?
Right. SpongeBob and the evolutionists all agree that one animal can change to something else.
Sir, that's not my question. We're gonna beat this over the head like SpongeBob until you get it. That's what the law of monophyly is, right? In SpongeBob land.
I'd have to go back and look at the definition of monophyly and different definitions in different dictionaries. It's been a long time. I don't use that one normally.
You're a doctor of creation and criticizing evolution, and you can't tell me what the law of monophyly is?
I'm just pointing out there are probably, like I found, there are 26 different definitions of species. I have got them in my...
There's one definition of the law of monophyly, and I've explained the concept to you, and you agree with me that that is what the concept of monophyly is, right? This is an easy question, sir.
They never leave or what they originally started. And then you said when single-cell creatures became multicellular, that never happened.
Right.
That's
According to
SpongeBob.
evolution, under the evolutionary theory, when that happens, that's called the law of monophyly.
Sure.
Right?
In their mind, it's single celled to the whale. It's still in the same phylum. It's a
Right.
monophylum.
Okay.
It's all in their mind. Right.
Right. Now, despite that, and again, we're still in the land of SpongeBob, right?
Oh, yeah, we definitely are.
If that was true, despite that, you would not say that the original eukaryotic cell and the dog are the same kind, right? Even though the dog never stopped being a eukaryote?
Correct. The dog and the single cell creature cannot bring forth anything.
Right. So if evolution is true, once you are different enough from the ancestral population that you appear different and you can't reproduce, then that is a different kind, even though you have a common ancestor, right?
Right. And that is the whole problem. They are imagining that they did change to a amoeba to a dog, and that it's not observed.
Okay.
God said they bring forth after their kind. Certainly a dog would be a different kind than an amoeba. I agree. And all those steps along the way, adding a backbone, adding a leg, it doesn't happen. We don't see it. It's religion. It's
Right.
fairy tale.
Right. And so that change of kind, that typically, though not always, occurs at the point where you can no longer bring forth. But it should also be the case that there should be some significant morphological changes, right?
There would be trillions of morphological changes to go from a single cell creature to a dog. Quadrillions of morphological changes. Right.
Right. We're not talking about going from a single cell creature to a dog right now, sir. We're talking about going from one kind to the next most adjacent kind, as evolutionists would define it. So I'm not talking about all of the steps. I'm talking about one of the steps. Now, in order to
Right.
go a single step, you have to have two things, as I understand you. You have to have morphological differences, and you have to have an inability to interbreed. You need those two things to go from one kind to an adjacent kind, right?
Yes, except an inability to interbreed may happen just because, like Great Dane and Chihuahua, he can't reach that high, or maybe whatever, so there may be inability to breed, but it's still the same kind. They have, but this is all man-made. Man has introduced these variations, selected these variations, artificial selection.
Sure. Right.
Great.
So we'll come back to that, I suppose.
It's been an hour now. Are you ever going to give me the example you said at the beginning?
Sir, I'd love to. But
Please
you know
do.
what? We can't even get to a
do it.
definition of kind yet.
Just
I'm
do it
not
right now.
going to do that, sir.
Okay.
So just answer my questions and we'll get there together. Okay? Work with me. Yeah. Okay. So we all know that cows can't jump over the moon. We're going to come back. I told you we'd come back to this because of physics and physical limitations. But if a cow did evolve such that it could jump over the moon, right? Let's say it had gigantic legs. It was the size of a trailer, of a semi-truck trailer, right? It had these massive legs. It was completely different from any kind of cow. You wouldn't even recognize it as a cow, right? And it can jump over the moon. I'm not going to, if that evolves, right? So you're saying there are limits. I'm saying if it crosses those limits, then I'm not going to hear you saying like, well, that's just still a cow. Am I? Like, that's a moon cow. That's a different kind of cow, assuming it can't interbreed with other cows.
If
right?
you could develop a cow to jump over the moon, I would buy it for $50.
That's not my question, sir. Not my question.
Okay.
My question is, that's a different kind, right? That's not a cow. That's a moon cow. It's this different kind of cow.
No,
Kind
it
of
it would still be a cow.
It's still a cow?
Able to bypassing the laws of physics. Again, the cow doesn't care. There's cows that give 200 pounds of milk every day. They can't live on their own in the woods, but as long as you.
What would this cow of ours have to do, sir, to change kinds? It can't even if it jumps over the moon, it can't change kinds. It's got to have all these adaptations. It's got to have gigantic, powerful legs. It's got to be able to breathe in space.
Right.
It's got to be able to travel, over a light second and come back and survive through the Earth's atmosphere. Looks nothing like a cow. Can't interbreed with cows. Still a cow, though, to you.
It's still a cow. There are 450 now breeds of cows, and as far as I know.
What, sir? What would make our cow a non-cow?
How about
it satisfied the definition here. It's morphologically different and it can't interbreed.
I'll give you an example. Calm down now. How about grow gills grow gills, and learn to live underwater. That'd be a new kind.
That'd be a new kind. Okay.
If he can get
But
gills
jumping
and
over
live
the moon's not a
underwater,
new kind, but growing gills and living underwater is a new kind.
or growing wings and flying, that'd be a new kind.
Aren't we just back to morphological differences and inability to interbreed?
Well, could the cow with wings interbreed? We're way off in La La Land here, a fairy tale
Right,
land.
we're talking about a cow that cannot interbreed and has wings. You'd say that's a new kind. That's not a cow. That's a flying cow. It's a different kind of cow, right?
Well, I've never thought about these things. I guess I think on more important things in life, but
Sir, I mean, isn't this what your doctorate is on?
my doctorate in flying cows? Oh no, sir.
This is what you do. This is you're professional at this, and you haven't thought about this stuff?
I'm a professional at flying cows.
You're a professional at teasing people about flying cows.
I have said over and over, there's a lot of different kinds of cows in the world, 450 breeds, whether a breed is the same as a species or whatever. But God said they bring forth
We're
after their
worried about
kind.
kinds, not species. I don't care about that.
Okay.
I was trying to be charitable to you. I was under the impression that when evolutionists said no wolf gives birth to a non-wolf, that what you're not saying, show me a wolf that gives birth to a cat. You're saying, show me the development of something that is morphologically different from the ancestral population and that can no longer make babies with that population. Is that right?
Well, as I said, the Great Dane and Chihuahua can no longer make babies, and they're still dogs. So I don't know that I'd be cautious of answering that with a definite hard yes.
Right. I understand you've just thought of a counterexample to your own question, sir. I mean, that is problematic.
A cow growing gills and living underwater would create multiple problems, because now you'd have to have two that can do this, male and female, in the same place at the same time. You'd have a huge problem. And it doesn't happen. Why are we talking about this fairy tale? We know cows make baby cows.
Come up with your own, this fairy tale has allowed you to come up with a counterexample to your own question. I mean, I suppose nobody but you could answer your challenge, but you've done it.
Farmers for thousands of years have observed cows make baby cows. They've never observed anything else. Science is what we can observe. Evolution
dog breeders have observed dogs that apparently can breed non-dogs, right?
And so therefore we're all related to an amoeba. Is that your logical conclusion?
No, of course not. I'm not saying evolution is right, sir, and I'm not saying creationism is wrong. I'm just saying you're wrong. I'm
wrong by saying they always bring forth after their kind.
Right. I mean, you've just given a counterexample.
Right? No, I didn't, because it doesn't happen. There are no cows with gills that live underwater.
I'm talking about. So look, let's just nail this down so that we can actually move forward and we can get into examples. So, am I correct in saying that when you say that something crosses that arbitrary border between kinds, what you are saying is that it is morphologically different in some manner, right? And two, that it is unable to interbreed. Is that true?
And therefore, it's a new kind. That's why I said I would be cautious to answer that way, because this has never been observed. Okay. Well, but they say, the textbook says, all life forms have a common answer.
Examples of observing it, sir. Your job is just to tell me what it is I'm supposed to observe. Right?
Well, science is what we can observe. Look up the definition of the word science from the Latin word seer. You're a lawyer. You took Latin.
I'm not going to debate the definition of the word science with you, sir, because we don't agree on that. I'm just here to debate the definition of the word kind with you and give you an example of one animal going to another kind.
We are 1 hour into the debate right now, so 30 minutes.
Sir, we're going to have to move on. And let's just do this. You know what, sir? I want you to lay it on me. Ask me your question about whether I'm related to an amoeba.
I did already. The textbooks in school have these family trees. Do you believe this is accurate, that all life forms came from a single-celled creature like an amoeba? Do you believe that's an accurate representation of what we know scientifically?
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. That's not a definite answer. Your Honor, make a definite ansser. Your Honor, you're dodging the question.
All I can do is tell the truth. It looks more likely than not to me when I look at the evidence. I'm not, a true believer or anything, but I think it's more likely than not.
So, Your Honor, the witness is saying he believes the evidence shows that he's related to an amoeba. Is
Right.
that accurate?
That's accurate.
Wow. Okay. So there, you got your question you wanted. Now,
All right.
where's the
Now
evidence that an amoeba?
I take it from your scoffing that that you think that answer is ridiculous. Is that fair?
It is extremely ridiculous. Yes, sir.
Okay. And you think it's ridiculous because you think that a single-celled organism and a multi-celled organism, those two things are super different, right?
Even a single-celled organism is way more complex than the whole internet system of the world.
That's super interesting and doesn't answer my question.
It's too complex for a single-celled creature to evolve from non-living material, and it's not observable to see it ever become anything else.
That's
like
also
science.
super interesting, sir. It was a really simple question. It's not a trick question.
Okay, you guys are
You want to
constantly.
hear my question again? Do you remember the question?
You just said you believe you're related to an amoeba. That is a religious belief. That's not science. Why do
Sir,
you
the
want to mix
question
that
I
in a
asked you-
science book?
Sir,
Why do you
the
want to mix
question
that
I
in?
asked you.
You're polluting our science books.
Oh,
Okay,
sir.
ask the question. You told me to ask you the question. Are you related to an amoeba? And I did.
You
You
tempt
are
me with
related
your
to an amoeba.
siren songs.
Okay, I'm sorry. Start over.
You
Go
know,
ahead.
I'd love to get into that too. But the question I asked you was, the reason you think it's ridiculous is because you think that single-celled organisms and multi-celled organisms are super different, right?
No. The reason I said it's ridiculous is because it's never been observed, and we know of all kinds of biological barriers where it can't happen. So if you wish to believe it, you can believe it, but it's ridiculous to believe such a thing.
Right. And then why is it ridiculous? That's my question, sir. I thought it was
Okay.
because you think that single-celled organisms like amoeba and multi-celled organisms like humans are super different. Isn't that the reason why you think it's ridiculous?
That's one of many reasons why it's
Right.
ridiculous.
It's
Okay.
one of them. That's fine. One of the reasons. Another one of the reasons is because nothing brings forth other than according to its kind, right?
That's all anybody's ever observed. Yes, sir.
Right. So, for example, there are zero, nada examples of multicellular creatures that spontaneously have some portion of their anatomy suddenly turn into single cell creatures. Not one arm, not one leg, not one cell, right?
Well, no, multi-celled creatures can produce single-celled things like sperm and eggs, which have an incredible code that then make another whole individual of that same kind.
Yeah.
So I don't. Did you ask? Was your question?
No, that's not my question.
multi-cell-
No.
Okay,
What
say
I'm
it.
asking you is, no. I'm not asking you about sperm and eggs. Now that would be unfair. No. What I'm asking you is, if let's say my arm suddenly collapsed into being a puddle of goo because all of the cells went back to being single-celled creatures, right? That would be an example of my arm turning into a different kind, right? You're not going to look at that puddle of goo that's just a bunch of single-celled creatures and say like, oh, that's just human, are you?
Well, your arm could certainly be disintegrated into single cells. Each one would have 46 chromosomes if they're still
Right.
alive. They would still
Right.
be recognizable as coming from a human, but each
Yeah.
one is not a human. Is your arm a human? No, your whole body is considered human. Again, it's definition of terms. What exactly is a human? But no,
Right.
all human cells, except for sperm and eggs, have 46 chromosomes. They have 23.
Right.
And so
regardless of
all
the fact that
that's-
regardless of the fact that they're otherwise genetically similar to humans, if all of the cells in my arm just decided we're gonna go back to being single-celled organisms, they would then be a different kind, right? A single-celled organism that's living as a single-celled organism, whether or not it has other genetic similarities to humans, that's a different kind, right?
Well, if all the parts of a car fell apart and I found a bolt on the highway and said, is this a car? Well, this is part of a car, but this is not a car. Together they make a car. All your cells together make an arm. So would we still call each cell an arm? I don't think so, Your Honor.
All right. So the answer to my question is yes.
No, it was.
Is that why I'm asking you?
If your arm turned into a pile of single cells, would each one
Living
be
as single cells, right? Living as
Living-
single cells.
Well, I don't think they could, but
I know.
again,
you
you're
don't think
you're off in fairy tale land. This doesn't
I know.
happen.
In SpongeBob, I just want to know if that happened, right? If that happened, then that would count, right?
I think we would be able to recognize these cells came from a human. Like you can
Who
probably
cares
recognize
if you
that.
can recognize where they came from? I want to know what they are right now. They're a different kind, right?
No, they're single cells that came from a human.
So you're okay. Well, then why is it ridiculous for me to say that I'm related to an amoeba if you're saying that I am the same kind as a bunch of single cells.
I didn't say that. You are made up of probably several trillion single cells that are each really complex, and together they make you. And so that's, I think, amazing. And
Right.
if they went back to single cells, we would call you dead.
Right. So,
Okay.
sir, let me try and look. If evolution were correct, and a human is just a colony of single-celled organisms that were somehow rounded up and given jobs, then it stands to reason that some of those cells, some of the time, ought to go on strike and just say, we don't want to be part of this human anymore. We want to do our own thing and just go back to being unicellular. But we don't see that, right?
You started off with a false definition that a human is a colony of single cells. I think it's way more complex than that. They are designed to fill their function. The lug nuts on my car are designed to hold on the wheel, you know. So I think each of the parts of your body is specially designed to make a human. But again, we don't observe this happening. And you're going backwards from human to single cell. That's disintegration.
So what?
Let's take it from a single cell to human. Where are the examples?
Let's take it this way. Like, I mean, what does it matter whether I'm going this way or that way? You say that I can't do it either way, right? Are you?
No.
You know, let me ask you that question then. Are you suggesting to me, sir, that things can change kinds as long as it involves a loss of information? So it's entirely possible for a human to go into being a bunch of single-celled organisms? Are you saying that's possible?
I'm saying a human can disintegrate into single-celled. Each of the cells would then die because they're designed to work together. They rely on a blood supply that something else is producing. So each cell cannot live by its own. If I cut off a piece of my skin, it won't keep living. It'll, even though.
And if it did, it would be a different kind, right?
I don't know. I'd be cautious with that answer. It doesn't happen.
Right. I know it doesn't happen, sir. You know what? I might have convinced myself here. I might have convinced myself, but I just want to know, if it did happen, that would be a different kind, right?
Oh, right here. Sorry, I got the wrong one. If it did happen, I don't know that it would be a different kind. Again, we're back in La La Land again with fairy tale stories, but
well,
so
sir,
what?
I think where we are is in moving goalposts. Whenever we establish something, you know, all of a sudden, if I ask you whether anything qualifies, even the most fantastical example, even a cow jumping over the moon or an arm collapsing into a puddle of cells, you're not willing to say that qualifies as a different kind because you're afraid that I'm going to come up with an example that is exactly that.
Okay, well,
you
go
don't
ahead.
have to be afraid of me, sir. Just answer
Tell
my
us
question.
the example. The purpose of the debate is for you to give.
Well, here's the problem, sir. If I give you an example of one of those things, then you're going to say, well, that doesn't count, right? I need you to tell me that it counts before I give you an example. So this fantastical example, right? You think it's, you're pretty you're pretty sure it can never happen, right?
What can never happen?
It's
Your arm turned to.
Yeah, my arm turns into a puddle of goo. You're not worried about that happening, are you?
What's the problem? No, I assure you it will happen. You will die and your body will disintegrate into single cells, and then they will all disintegrate into atoms, and you're going to be dust one day.
And in the event that those cells did not immediately disintegrate into other atoms, but started multiplying and living on their own as single-celled creatures, in that SpongeBob world, that would count, right?
Wow. I don't know that that's worth even considering. It doesn't happen. It's not observed.
Well, sir, that's my problem. What your problem is that you have to tell me whether or not it would count.
I'd have to. I have to ask for more time to consider that. I don't think would man
Sir,
call it.
We got an hour and 10 minutes. Come on, you've had lots of time.
Would some person call it a different kind? Maybe so. Does that qualify as the biblical definition? I don't know. I don't think so.
Okay, according to you, you're the expert. You're the one with the doctorate.
Okay, let me tell you this: would those single cells of your arm be able to reproduce?
Yeah, they're able to reproduce. In this SpongeBob example, they're able to
and turn back to an arm.
No. They're not going to turn back into an arm. They're going to continue to be single-celled organisms from now on.
Yeah. So you're asking me if your arm disintegrated, would the single cells be a different kind?
Yeah.
By our definition of life forms, I guess we would say a single cell is a different life form than an arm on a human being, but they're not able to bring forth.
Right. No, the cell wouldn't be able to bring forth with the human. Obviously, it would be bringing forth just by dividing, right? Like a prokaryote, or not a prokaryote, single cell organism.
You said earlier going either way, going from multicellular to single cellular, disintegrating, is not the same as saying going from single cellular to multicellular. That's never been observed. It's not science.
I don't care. All I care about is whether or not it's a different kind. So you're telling me, and I just want to nail this down. You're telling me that if cells in my body decided they're not going to cooperate and be part of my body anymore, they're going to do their own thing, they're going to live as single-celled creatures, that's a different kind. Those cells are a different kind, right?
I will give that a qualified yes. To my understanding of your question, Your Honor, I think that is probably a different kind.
Okay. All right. And it wouldn't even have to be the whole limb or whatever that suddenly drops multicellularity. Even if just a single cell were to do it, that'd be enough, right?
I lost a piece of skin cutting the tree down the other day, and it dried up and died. It didn't survive into nothing.
Not my question. So what's the answer to my question?
Try it again. The question. Please repeat the question.
Yeah. You know what? I mean, I might almost be convincing myself. I mean, like, so in scientific terms, to evolutionists, you know what? I'm going to change sides. I'm on your side now, Dr. Hovind. You know what? In scientific terms, evolutionists, if you would expect to see mutations where a multicellular part of the cell gets switched off, the cell reverts back to doing what it would otherwise. Your theory would predict that, but we don't see that, right, Dr. Hovind?
Not only do we don't see it, that's going backwards. Show me that the title of the debate is "Where's an example of something producing other than its kind?" You've given me fairy tale stories for an hour and 20 minutes.
I know. Look, I'm on your team now.
Like you are, yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, I'm on. I've switched sides.
I believe you. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And if something were to suddenly drop multicellularity, that'd be a different kind, right, sir?
If something would go from multicellular to single celled, I don't think it would be a life form. I don't think the cells can live like that.
Right.
5 minutes left.
Why are we discussing this fairy tale story?
Because cancer, sir.
Because of an answer?
No, cancer.
Oh, cancer?
Cancer. Yes.
Oh, well, I think a lot of diseases that man has, such as cancer, may have a totally different cause than we realize. It may be a deficiency. Like they looked for years, millions of people died of scurvy. Why did God give scurvy? He didn't. You got to have vitamin C to prevent it. Wow, they called them the limeys because they finally brought limes on board. It wasn't God causing scurvy.
Sir, I just posted a paper.
I think cancer is a deficiency disease in the same category as scurvy.
No, sir, it's not. Cancer is a mutation of cells.
I believe that it is. You can believe what you want. Okay.
So, sir, the problem is that cancer is a really good example of a multicellular creature, or a cell within a multicellular creature, dropping multicellularity because of the mutation of one of 12 genes, and then going off on its own and becoming a single-celled creature. So that would be one kind turning into another kind. And if you'd like to see a scientific paper that says that, I've just posted it in our little chat.
Let me understand now. You're saying a cancer cell forming in a body has lost, do you say 12 chromosomes?
No, any one of 12. Any one of 12. The more it loses, the worse the cancer gets.
So if they lose one of 12 chromosomes, the cell becomes cancerous and now operates on its own.
Mutation. No, not lose, mutation. Those are the cells that are responsible for
it mutates.
cooperation.
It loses information, becomes cancerous, and now it can operate on its own.
That's right. It starts to operate on its own. It starts to grow without regard to the body.
And that is your evidence that an amoeba turned to a whale.
No, that's my evidence that that a multicellular creature brought forth life other than its kind.
So a multicellular creature brought forth a cancer cell, and therefore Evolution is true. We need to teach all
No,
kids.
no, no, not evolution. Where did I say? When did it? That's not the title of the debate. That's not what I have to prove. All
okay.
I have to prove, sir, is I don't have to prove creationism right. I don't have to prove evolution wrong. I should have to prove you wrong.
Hold it. You said you're on my side.
Yeah, I know, but then cancer. I just thought about that.
What happened here? Oh, that's another
Cancer,
SpongeBob story.
yeah,
Okay,
cancer happened. I mean,
I
but
agree.
I don't know. Maybe, if I'm understanding you, like, are you saying that, um, what we're looking at, we're looking at cells, right? And those cells
Okay.
mutate, and now they're not cooperating with the body anymore. They're not living as a multicellular creature anymore. They're living as a single-celled creature.
Well, no, not quite.
And this is science, right? We can observe this, we can test this, we can repeat this. You can look at 100 different cases of cancer.
Well, you're missing a major part of this. Can that cancer cell live as a single-celled creature on its own, or does it now require a host to live in?
That's a good question.
That's a real good question.
So what you're saying is that's not good enough. We need to be able to do this in a lab. We need to take the cancer cell out of the person, put it in something else.
No, lay it on the floor. Don't give it any support at all. It'll die.
Right. Well, I mean, what if we put it in a rat and let it live there?
So if we give two cancer cells together, are there male and female cancer cells? Do they have to?
No, they produce asexually.
Oh, asexually. Okay. And so that is an example for the purpose of this debate tonight that because a multi-cell body, like such as a human, can produce a cancer cell, which is single cellular and now acts on its own. And that is your evidence for them not bringing forth after their kind. Is that
right? Well, I mean, I guess I'm saying, like, you've identified a pretty, a weakness, right? Like it.
So the Bible is incorrect.
Well, I'm not saying the Bible is incorrect, sir. I'm just saying you're incorrect.
Okay.
Right?
2 minutes.
So you're saying, like, look, if it happens outside of the body and then eventually maybe happens outside of anybody, that might be something. Like, you're saying, look, come back to me when you can show that. Unless I see that, I'm not interested. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, I would have to point out for the purpose of this debate or any debate that it would take quadrillions of changes to go from a single-celled creature to a human in all the charts that they show. And
Just
giving
12.
one, good point. I'll do some research on, is a cancer cell able to live on its own? I'm not aware of any that are. I think they always require a host.
But doesn't have to be a human
and
host.
So really you got a different problem now. But that's an example of going backwards from multicellular, single cellular, not.
So?
The charts show the family trees. You asked me to ask you condescendingly, do you believe you descended from an amoeba?
Right.
Do you?
Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. I think the evidence. I think the evidence suggests that, and I think the reason it's not ridiculous is because if I can turn into a single-celled creature, the idea that a single-celled creature could turn into me is not that crazy.
Okay, but you said you're on my
side.
side.
In this thing, sir. So, in the event that we could show that the single-celled creatures lived outside of the body that evolved them, then that would be better evidence. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying I'll do some research on that. I think the answer most people would say so far, if you take a cancer, don't they cut out cancer to save a person's life?
Sure, but they also study cancer to see if they can prevent it. And one of the things they studied was
right. So when they cut the cancer out, does it keep living forever? Does it start making more cancerous tumors?
That's a really good question, sir. I'm going to send you another paper to read. And yeah, basically that's what happened.
Okay.
So I think that's probably pretty much it for tonight, Donny and Matt. We've gotten to where we've gotten to where I was hoping to get to for tonight. So I'm happy to stick around and let Dr. Hovind ask me any questions that he likes. And I expect naturally that you'll want to have another debate, Dr. Hovind, and maybe have a chance to read some of these papers. Because of course, I mean, you can't just digest them here on the spot. You need some time. And I think it would be reasonable for us to give you that time and you can come back and we can have another go at this. What do you think?
Oh, it has been many years since I heard fairy tale stories like this, and it'll take me a while to come up with it. Okay.
Well, sir, I always do try. I do try and entertain. I'm glad that I could. I'm glad I could pique your interest at least.
Yes.
Let's give you guys a couple minutes to close up. Mr. Anderson, if you would like to give a 2-minute closing statement, and then we'll go to Kent, and then we'll jump into Q&A.
Sure. Yeah, I think we've made quite a lot of progress here. We've agreed on a common set of assumptions regarding the world, which focuses the conversation, and we'll be able to use that again, and we're referring to that as the October 13th protocol. We've cleared up some misunderstandings with regard to exactly what Dr. Hovind means when he says that things bring forth after their kind. We've got the criteria of morphological change and reproductive isolation. Dr. Hovind's got some papers about cancer that he can read, and he can respond to that. Dr. Hovind's also got the counterexample that he came up with respect to the Great Dane and the Chihuahua. I think wolf and Chihuahua would probably have been a better example, but that's something we can talk about some more in another debate. And hopefully you've all been entertained by this process, and we can look forward to seeing you next time when Dr. Hovind and I continue our polite, courteous discussion about potential examples of weird fringe exceptions to his general rule, because I have lots more. There you go. Thanks for everybody.
Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson, for that summary. Kent, we'll give you the opportunity as well to summarize your points for tonight. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. And yes, I've been very entertained. It's been a long time since my daddy told me fairy tales, and I appreciate you doing that. Okay. All of his examples were an example, if they even existed, would be a variation within the same kind, microevolution, which does not explain the first 5 critical steps of evolution, which I cover on my seminar all the time. We don't see number 5 changing to another kind. We don't see origin of time, space, matter from nothing. They assume they start with time, space, matter, and life and complex code, and then want to go from there. The whole evolution story is a giant fairy tale. It doesn't happen in reality. There's no observations anywhere on the planet in all of history of a farmer seeing a cow produce a non-cow or a dog produce a non-dog. It just isn't science. That's all. Bible said they'd bring forth after their kind. That's all anybody's ever observed. I'm not claiming that should be taught in schools as part of the curriculum. So the burden of proof is not on me. They think they don't bring forth after their kind, and an amoeba turned to a human and a whale and everything in between. That's fairy tale stuff. I resent that being taught in our schools. It's certainly not science. You have to imagine that your arm dissolves and each cell can now live on its own and start its own country and city and everything, battlefield. It doesn't happen. We observe cows produce cows. 450. Man has decided to categorize them into different breeds of cow. The cows don't care. Nearly all of them can interbreed. So they're still a cow. Okay? It's man putting these classification systems together. It doesn't matter. They're still bringing forth after their kind. God said in the Bible, which I believe to be true, he made them to bring forth after their kind. That's what we've observed. I think that's as far as we can go with science. As far as how the cow got started from non-living material, that would be outside of science. So why are we teaching that to the kids? So I resent evolution being taught in our schools. It's a fairy tale for grown-ups. We saw that clearly demonstrated tonight. Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Kent, for that 2-minute summary. Gentlemen, very entertaining debate. We've had close to 300 people enjoying. And so let's get into some audience questions before we wrap it up. Matt, I'll hand it back to you. Oh, Matt, I think you're on mute, brother.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll start off just with real quick statements. These, because they were super chats that came in. So I'm guessing they're geared towards Mr. Anderson into making him want to become a believer. Basically, this one came from Bubblegum. Said, the self-arrangement of elements by random chance to make functional structures is an atheist miracle. Natural things don't do that, only minds do. And then we find the same type of statement by George Bond. Life is a miracle. Rock soup doesn't result in codes, codons, information, and decision-making algorithms. That requires forward thinking, forward planning, and requires a forward planner. Now, I would normally give you guys a chance to respond, but we're running out of time. So the next one is a direct question from Mr. Anderson, and that is, what is your favorite Matrix movie?
Yeah, the first one. That's a classic. Just by way of brief response to the other guys, look, guys. I mean, I'm not trying to dunk on creationism in general. That wasn't the goal for tonight. My goal is just to provide an example of a kind producing another kind. Whether or not God did that, whether or not that was because of evolution, it's not the purpose of this debate. And Dr. Hovind, if you want to talk about stellar evolution or you want to talk about the origin of the universe or any of that stuff, like, let's do it, man. I love that stuff. But we only had an hour and a half, and I mean, look how far we got, right?
And if you'd like to respond, go ahead.
Right. I don't think we got anywhere. I still didn't see an example that's supposed to prove of, any. Have you shown me? Have we seen it happen? Imagining your arm dissolving is not seeing this happen and these cells becoming. So your best example that you gave finally after an hour and a half was cancer. You're saying
and you got your dog example too. But yeah, I mean, the two examples of cancer that are backed up by that scientific research and also backed up by the fact that you agreed that those things would qualify as different kinds. Yeah, those. I mean, I think we did. Sir, I look forward to talking to you some more. I think you're a very good debater. I think we can make a lot of great content together. So I mean, I had a lot of fun. I hope you did too.
I had a blast. Yes. So the fact that humans or animals, also living organisms, can produce cancerous cells is enough evidence for you to believe these family trees.
No, sir. It's just enough evidence for me to believe that there are these weird fringe examples of kinds producing and bringing forth other than their kind. I'm not saying that it always happens. I'm not even saying it usually happens. I'm just saying it can happen. And here's one example. And you're right. We had to go through all that presupposition stuff, and that was boring and stuff like that, but it was kind of necessary because it kind of nailed down a bunch of stuff. And then we made some progress. And we can do this again. I got tons more examples, and we can focus on the examples next time if you want.
Okay. Would you agree it would take trillions of changes like that to make these family trees true? Until then, these are lines on paper. This is not science.
No, I wouldn't agree that it takes trillions. Trillions is a little bit much. Quadrillion, no. Like
quintillion.
It's less than that, actually.
Oh.
Yeah, and the reason for that, as I understand it, and this is a little bit off topic, but you asked the question, is that there are parts of the genome that code for proteins and that are really important for determining like morphological differences, and then there are parts of the genome that aren't as important. Like it's not that they don't do anything, right? It's just that they don't do as much, right? So a lot of these morphological changes are driven by mutations in those more important parts of the genome, and then a lot of these like less important ones, those happen too, but they're not as critical, if that makes any sense.
Okay, you mentioned them turning off functions. Are there any that add new novel information, or is all these mutations downhill, negative, away from the goal?
That's like a super interesting question, and it's not one that I'm going to be able to answer. And kind of, we could do that with we'll talk about. I mean, we'll talk about whether or not you want to do more examples of weird and wacky examples of changes of kind. Because like I said, I got more. We can do that, or we could do this other question another time. I mean, I'm open.
Right. Would you agree that an amoeba does not have the gene code to make an arm, and it would take lots of genes to make the genetic information to build an arm that functions? 2 of them, and the nervous system and the blood system to supply them, and the balance system to keep them going. There's a lot more to just an arm than the cells to make that arm, the bones, the muscles, the tissues, and there'd be a lot of stuff that have to be added to an amoeba. And you're thinking random chance over billions of years is able to do that.
Well, I mean, I think when you say stuff like that, you're kind of being a little bit unfair to amoebas. Like, they're super interesting. They're very complicated, and they've got bigger genomes than we do, right?
Yeah,
so
they're smart enough to become a whale if you give them a whale. I know.
Well, I mean, I don't think that amoebas I mean, we've kind of been using amoeba as like a shorthand for like single-celled organism, but if you're talking about like amoeba, like amoebas didn't, nobody thinks amoebas became whales, right? But like, I thought you were talking about like amoebas, right? The actual thing, they're cool. Super different. Like, I mean, they're way different. They've been evolving like in a different direction than us for like a really long time. So like, they're super different, right?
Oh, they are amazing. And many single-celled creatures have a little hair at the back, the flagella, that's attached to a motor that turns 100,000 RPM.
Mm.
And 8 million of those motors would fit on the stump of a human hair. Pluck a hair, cut it off, 8 million motors. And all 8 million of those motors happened by chance and came from a dot of nothing exploding.
I don't know if they
I'm
happen
on
by
your
chance,
side.
but it
I'm
is
on your
super
side now.
interesting. It is super interesting that there's that
Gentlemen,
many motors and
I'm on your side.
buddy, I love it. I love it. Let's be on the same team. That's what I was trying to say. Like, we just got to ask each other questions, right?
All three of
You
us
can
can work together
come
now.
visit me in SpongeBob land, right? Come visit. It's nice here. You know, we got eggs. We got, or I don't know, eggs. Or we got,
Okay.
I don't know. We got stuff.
All right,
Next
gentlemen.
question.
Oh, yeah, you got it, Matt. Actually, I'll say, Matt, before I hand it to you, a lot of people in the audience asking about the next open mic. For round 2 between Mr. Anderson and Kent, we'll definitely incorporate an open mic. So hopefully sooner than later. Okay, Matt, feel free to ask the next question.
All right. Mr. Anderson, if you can explain the differences between species and what we creationists define as a kind.
No, I can't. Like Dr. Hovind said, like there's like 26 different definitions of species, at least. I mean, like species. The problem is that life, like reality, is kind of messy, right? And so, trying to define species is it's like drawing that line on the color gradient. And you ask a different scientist, they'll draw a different line. It's like, if you want 3 opinions, ask 2 scientists.
Good one. Kent, would you like to
I
help answer it for me?
I like that answer. That's good. Ask, if you want 3 opinions, ask 2 scientists. Probably if you want 10 opinions, ask 1 lawyer. Okay.
Yeah, the joke's usually originally for lawyers, but
Okay. You're right. The word species and kind are used interchangeably. This is all man drawing lines to decide which one goes in which box. Okay. The animals do not care. They know what their kind is. Here's Webster's dictionary: species, a kind or a sort. Synonyms for species. Synonyms.
don't use the dictionary. We're above that. You've got a doctorate. I'm a nerd. Let's not use the dictionary. That
So
sucks.
dictionaries don't count?
Well, it's not for this context.
Where would you like me to
use
find-
a real definition? Because
Okay, let's take the ultimate source, the Bible. They can bring
kind?
forth
Go for it.
after their kind. Now, I just trumped the whole argument. I brought the ultimate irrefutable source way beyond a dictionary. God said they can only bring forth after their kind. I win. Good night.
Well, exact answer.
All right, gentlemen, I guess we'll go to, actually, what we'll do is this one here, because it's a super chat. Matt, if you want to read this one to Kent.
Sure. Kent mentions the inability to make vitamin C. Why is it all great apes also make or can't make vitamin C? Why do we all have the same broken gene caused by the same mutation?
I'm not sure it's caused by a mutation. I don't know that. We could assume that. And if the diet, I think God was amazing. He designed the world that not only has living creatures, but the food that they need to live. And he told Adam and Eve, eat the fruit, vegetables, and seeds. And if we would simply do that, it would provide most of the minerals we need and probably wouldn't have any diseases. So I think most of the disease, back on vitamin C. We know the sailors died in the British Navy from scurvy because of lack of vitamin C. And they finally started bringing limes on board. They called them the limeys because of that. So do we all have the same broken gene? I don't know. Are great apes, do they die of scurvy? I don't know.
If they don't eat vitamin C, yeah, they do.
Oh, how do they get vitamin? Is there something in that ape that
they get it through their diet?
Yeah. So the desire, sometimes you have a hunger, like I want to eat an avocado or something. You don't know why, but maybe that's got a vitamin you need. Where did that drive to get those vitamins come from? Is that designed? I mean, when my car can't get enough gasoline, it starts sucking in air and starts gurgling and calling, lights come on, like, give me gas, Where's the light coming on that tells your body, I need vitamin C? How does the ape know? You see all of our animals around here at our petting zoo, they select what they want. When I offer a hot dog to the squirrel, he's not interested. I offer the hot dog to my dog, wow, I'll take it. When I offer a peanut to the dog, he don't want it. They all seem to know what they need. I think that's pretty cool design.
All right. Matthew, unless you wanted a quick thought, we can move to the next question. Up to you, gentlemen. Okay. Let's Matt, let's go with, there you go, Matt. Go with echoing erudite.
All right. For Mr. Anderson, during the debate, you mentioned cells evolving to getting a backbone. Can you show the observable evidence for this happening without just inferring and asserting it?
No. Next question. No, I'm not going to be that dismissive. So this kind of comes back to this whole concept of like, what is science, right? And one of the things that Dr. Hovind likes to say is that science is just what we can see and observe, and that's not science. That's looking, right? Science requires a little more than that. Science requires a degree of imagination and inference. And it's that imagination and the inference that allows us to take the evidence of the things that we see and figure out larger processes of things that we can't necessarily see. And then we can get a lot more out of and understand the natural world a lot better and make predictions because of that logic and that using of evidence to create inferences and use our imaginations.
Kent, would you like to answer that?
Well, science is knowledge gained from observation, experiments to describe the world around us. I agree. I'm in favor of imagination. I had a wonderful time tonight imagining your arm dissolving.
Kent!
So I don't want it to happen. Well, you brought it up. I thought, wow, what would happen if my whole arm dissolved?
But I didn't think you were going to enjoy it.
I use it. I didn't say, well,
it was a thought experiment.
I like using my imagination. Okay. I agree. Things that we see cows produce cows, dogs produce dogs. We see that. Millions of people have seen it. They've observed it. That's all we've ever seen. Now, anything beyond that is imagination. And since the word science comes from the Latin word seer, knowledge, what do we know? We know dogs produce dogs. That we know. We do not know dogs came from an amoeba. That we don't know. So that's outside the field of science. Just like you're wanting to get something outside the kind, I think your evolution religion is outside the field of science. And you can have it if you want. And you, obviously you do, but it's not part of, it shouldn't be part of science. Science, Latin word seer, scientia. What do we know? Evolution is not science, it's a religion. And you're welcome to it. Knowledge gained through study or practice. Okay, you go practice all the dogs you want, all the cows you want. See, get it to turn into something different. It won't happen.
Well, okay. Do you guys mind if I go off on a little rant here, or do we need to move on?
Yeah, you can have the last word. It was a question for you, so feel free. Go ahead.
Okay. I'll give you an example. Let's say we watch a video from 40 years ago of a man with a bowl of soup, right? And you see the pursed lips and you see the ripples appear on the surface of the soup. So if you were to watch the man do that and all you were allowed to do was observe, then all you could say is that when he pursed his lips over the soup, there ripples appeared on the in the soup. And that's not very useful. And it's not science because it's just describing what you see. Science requires that addition of a little imagination. You can't see the air coming out of the man's lungs and hitting the surface of the water. So you have to take the things that you can see, like the shape of his lips and the ripples and your knowledge of the past and your own experiences in terms of what those things are usually paired with, and imagine that it means that when you see lips shaped like that and ripples across the top of that bowl of soup like that, that means that man was likely blowing on the surface of the soup long ago and far away, and even though you weren't there. Now you have inferred using your observations and your imagination. And is that science? I mean, I think so. You have a theory that allows you to make a useful prediction, like that the air is coming out of the man's lungs and moving over the soup, and that cools it. And going even further, you might even imagine, based on all these things, that the soup was hot. And that's kind of cool.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Anderson. There you go, Matt.
Okay, do I get to answer that?
Oh, sure.
That finally is a good illustration. We don't know what gravity is. We can observe what it does. We can observe the air hitting the soup, making the ripples. Actually, we can see air molecules under a good microscope, see the oxygen and nitrogen and et cetera, carbon dioxide. But
I don't think that's true.
We have to imagine that he's indeed blowing on the soup. This is where you can extend observable science within limits. So, but you guys want to take observable science of dogs producing a variety of dogs, big ones, little ones, and come to the conclusion that dogs are related to butterflies. That's way outside the field of common sense, science even. Takes a real, you'd have to be smoking something to believe that.
Well, I mean, I don't really think it's that different, Dr. Hovind,
Well, no, you don't.
for you to ridicule that, than it is for you to say that that this inference with respect to soup is predicated on this belief in this invisible idea of air that nobody has ever directly observed, and that we can't even prove that there was air in the room when the video was taken long ago and far away. I mean, would it be fair for us to call our theory about the existence of air a religion?
Well, no, that analogy at some point would break down, like all analogies do. I think that's a reasonable conclusion. The guy's blowing on the soup. Of course, there could have been an earthquake at the same time and shaking the soup, and he's going, "Ooh, earthquake!" And we might come to the wrong conclusion, But I'll go with the earthquake. I think it was an earthquake, and he was going.
Oh, I think maybe the ripples were made by supernatural forces, and you know what? You cannot disprove that the ripples. That he wasn't just pursing his lips, and that God wasn't making the ripples in the soup. I mean,
yeah, we could,
based on the logic that I often see from you, those two explanations are equally likely.
I didn't say they're equally likely. I said we could sit here all night and make up fairy tales. Somebody in the other room was blowing through a long straw, and he was just trying to fool everybody. Oh, yeah. Why are we doing this?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Waste of time.
Why do we do this? Why do we do this, Dr. Hovind? Why do we torture ourselves like this?
I do it because I am concerned about your soul. I think you're more than just a collection of cells. I think you have a body, a soul, and a spirit. And I think God designed all of us, and I think we've all sinned and broken his laws, and I want to see you go to heaven. And I think you were taught a dumb theory, and you believed it. I think the Hamas people were taught something stupid, and they believed it, and they act on it. They think the Jews are inferior.
I'm not affiliated with Hamas, sir.
No.
But I do appreciate your concern for my soul. That's very touching.
But you were taught evolution, and you believed it. I'm sorry for that. I would like to help. I'd like to undo the damage that some teacher did to you.
I appreciate your help. I look
Keep
forward.
Keep watching my videos.
I look forward to more help.
I'll send you one to Canada, wherever you are. Okay, watch them.
I think I've seen a lot of your videos already.
And it didn't work yet. Watch them again.
I'm very stubborn.
Okay.
You guys are going to be best friends in no time. So what we'll do?
I think that might be true.
Gentlemen, let's wrap it up with. I know you have another appointment tonight, Kent. So let's wrap it up with one more question. As 2 hours has really flown by. This has been fun. The audience has had a good time, and I'm sure people are already anticipating a round two. Mr. Anderson and Kent. Okay, Matt, here's the next question for you, brother.
All right, Kent, this one is for you for starting. What is a kind, and how do you determine what organisms belong to the same kind, and how different do those organisms must become before you or they are considered to be a different kind?
This has been a puzzle for science for thousands of years. How do we classify them? And I'll go back to what I've said hundreds of times. The animals do not care how we classify them. We have on our North 40 a bunch of cows and sheep and horses and donkeys all mixed together. They wander around freely together. I feed them all at the same time out of the same trough. We pet them all. The kids have a blast. And the cows show no interest in the sheep in mating with them. The cows, they know what their kind is, so they're smarter than most evolutionists. So they think they know their kind. That is kind, a sort. The Bible says if they can bring forth, they're the same kind. But just like scientists have always had a very difficult time declaring exactly what is the definition of species, I'll show you here, right here. To this day, Scientific American, to this day, scientists struggle with that question. What is a species? The debate over species is far from over. I think I suppose the same is true of kind, but see, I'm not asking for mine to be paid for as by taxpayers and put in the public schools. The evolutionists are demanding that their religion of all these animals coming from an amoeba is science, and we all should pay to have that be taught. So I don't have to prove the definition of kind. God said if they can bring forth, they're the same kind. I think that's generally really observable and intuitive to a 5-year-old. Most people can tell. Ask a 5-year-old, is this bird the same as this cow? Oh, no, they're a different kind. So generally it's intuitive, but again, species is not defined. 26 definitions of species. What is it? Most of them will say, well, a good synonym for a species is right here. I'll show you. Synonym for a species, kind. What is a species? It's a kind or sort. And you can get science textbooks or dictionaries or whatever you trust and say, they're all going to say that. I don't think anybody knows for sure where the border is in every case, but it doesn't matter. The fact that we can't define the border between orange and reddish orange doesn't mean that black is white. Go ahead.
Well, I think that Dr. Hovind's absolutely right. Even in this very debate, we've really kind of nailed down what a kind is, and generally what we would say is morphological differences and an inability to interbreed. But if you're unsure, then you know what? Take the two animals, put them in a pen together, and they bring forth, then they're probably the same kind. So if you take a wolf and a chihuahua and you put them in the same pen together, the wolf's going to mate with the wolf and the chihuahua is going to mate with the chihuahua, and the only thing the wolf's going to do to the chihuahua is eat it. So
Right.
They're different kinds, right?
Oh, because it eats it? No.
Well, no, because they don't mate.
Okay.
And they're
They
super
probably-
different
no,
in size.
They probably could. Might be physical limitations, but genetically, I think the number of chromosomes, there have been examples of dogs and wolves mating and
But
dogs and
never
coyotes
chihuahuas
mating.
and wolves. Never
Well,
chihuahuas and
Chihuahua's
wolves.
barely a dog, but yeah, it's still in the dog.
Exactly. It's barely a dog. It's a different kind than a wolf, even though they share a common
There's a
ancestor.
dog coyote hybrid. Let's see, I've got
That's
samples of
another
all.
good. That's another good counterexample. I mean, we're full. We're knocking them out tonight.
Hey, remember, I'm on your side now.
No, we're on the same side.
Yeah. Okay. Next question.
Team
I've been
kind.
drinking water. I've been drinking water for 2 hours, and I got to go potty. So talk fast. Go ahead.
No, you go.
Gentlemen, we'll be fair. You've given us 2 hours of your time, so we'll wrap it up there. That way, Ken, you can have a potty break before your next show. So, Mr. Anderson, again, good job tonight. Definitely a lot of fun. Matt, I'll hand it over to you as our host and moderator for tonight, brother. Feel free to give us some final words and wrap things up.
Absolutely. Yeah, thanks for the audience for throwing in all those questions, because I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. We did our best, which ran out of time. Maybe in round 2, we can have another one. So
I'm sorry to interrupt, Matt. We should make sure that the 2 papers that I posted in our private chat get posted onto the community site, so that anybody who wants to read them can.
I've got them saved.
Okay.
I saved them for you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah. And I hope everybody enjoyed. And if there's going to be an after show, I do not know where that's going to be. I'm sorry. I didn't see anything go by in the comment section. So if anybody wants to have one, now is the time to post that in the comment section, and you guys can enjoy the after show there. And
I'm happy to have an after show if somebody wants to let me know where it is.
Awesome. Or if no one does, you can also have one on your channel. Do you have a channel? You don't have a channel. Okay. Well, you can start one.
I just like being mean to people.
Don't worry. You know what? Next
I
week's
hope I wasn't
open
too
mic-
mean, Dr. Hovind.
Next week, you were, Ken and Mr. Anderson. Did you guys have any final thoughts, final words on your end?
No, I would say one of us is wrong. Pascal's wager. If I'm wrong and there is no God and I die and go back to stardust, I haven't lost a thing. If he's wrong, he's lost everything. I win either way. I have a wonderful, happy life. I enjoy believing there's a God and he made me and talking to him. And is it all fairy tale stuff? I don't think so. But if you think it is, okay, I'm still having fun. I enjoy life. Leave me alone.
I think that, you know what, Pascal's wager and there's a whole bunch of stuff we could dig into on that. Also super interesting. It's unfortunate we don't have time.
All right.
All right, gentlemen, we're going to wrap things up. To the audience, thanks for tuning in. Matt, thank you for hosting tonight. Kent, Mr. Anderson, we'll talk to you later. Bye.
All right.